Hariom friends, welcome to the second part of the series on the famines created by the British in India. So before we kind of move into the nitty-gritty of how many people died, when the famines were, what they were caused by, and what the British did to actually worsen the effects of the famine, we first need to understand a little bit about the psychology which makes you kind of immune to the sight of millions dying in front of your eyes. So let's have a look at this. So this is again going to be a short video. Okay, so quite a few of you probably remember this movie, Slumdog Millionaire, won quite a few Oscars, and this was directed by a British gutter inspector called Danny Boyle. So at the time when the movie came out, I think it was maybe 2008. I don't remember the year. I have never seen this movie. I don't see movies uh, which kind of typically promote the caste, curry and cow narrative in the West. And this movie was a very typical British movie about India, actually a very racist one. Same racist viewpoint. If you look at the British movies from the 1950s, 60s, where they used to have British actors who used to paint their faces black and pretend to talk in Indian accents. So quite a similar kind of thing, except this, you typically use Indian or Indian origin actors to portray India in an extremely bad light, and typically Hindus in a bad light. And unsurprisingly, this movie won a lot of Oscars and other awards, and it made an almost end of the career director. He kind of refreshed his career. So you won't see the British making movies about the millions of women they used as sex slaves in India, or the trillions they stole from India, or the complete destruction of Indian environment, society and culture. But you need to ask the question, what motivates this mindset of continually portraying India in a bad light? And the West seems to have a death wish for India. So I noticed this in during the COVID pandemic as well, even in my office, where so people were wondering why the death toll in India wasn't higher, why weren't millions dying, because they have become conditioned to this, to kind of take it as a matter of fact that India is a hellhole where millions will typically die. So there's a very particular undercurrent and mentality which drives this. 150 years ago or even 100 years ago, this was very on top of the river kind of thing, where it was very obvious, but now it's an undercurrent, so even people don't realize, because it's now become a foundational assumption of how things are and how things work in India. So this is a kind of what was referred to as a woodcut. So woodcut basically was a pattern, or a which was cut on wood, and then like a typical stamp, you would put ink and then press it on paper, and this was the result. So this is from a missionary pamphlet from the early 1800s, and it shows Hindu woman being forcibly burned by Hindus. And these two poor English gentlemen, they are feeling so sorry and sad, when the reality was obviously they forced Indian women and girls as young as 11 12 years into these common brothels. So this was a typically missionary conditioning, that the Hindus are dark, evil, and they burn their women, and you need the white men to save their women and children, etc., etc. So what is a heathen? So heathen is actually a term which was used to define or kind of categorize Romans. So Romans who followed Sanatana Dharma, who were not Christians, so they were referred to as heathens, or uncivilized or barbaric people. And again, this was typically for Romans who did not believe in Christianity. Later on, this was applied to pretty much everyone who was not a Christian. And even the Christian sects which kind of fell outside the mainstream narrative that was running, so it could be the Orthodox or the Catholic, whatever it was, were called as heathens and heretics. And Hindus were dehumanized right from the time missionaries kind of got their foothold in India. So the missionaries always follow the military. Now it has to be pointed out, so in the early days of the East India Company, and even till East India Company kind of defeated the Maratha Empire in 1804, and even till later, till 1830s, early 1830s, the East India Company actively discouraged any kind of missionary activity. So while they allowed them to operate, they would not support them, or they would not forcibly enforce it on their Hindu sepais, etc., because the East India Company was not militarily sound, and they realized that if they tampered with the religion of the Hindus, or the dharma of the Hindus, religion is a long word, then it would cause a very catastrophic lash out against the company. It might jeopardize the company's interests in India. But as Indians lost military strength and the British domination of India was complete, from 1833, I believe, the missionaries were given a free hand in India. So they were allowed to kind of convert, proselytize, and they were also given state support to do this. So even in the East India Company's army, the every Sunday they were forced to listen to sermons from these Christian padres and missionaries, forced to stand in the heat, and just to try and convert them. So again, in Christianity, the term heathen or pagan is equivalent to the subhuman of the Nazis. So you are fit for extermination, and this is why when millions of Hindus died, one of the viceroys of India remarked that anyway the Hindus breed like rabbits. So if they die out in the millions, what's the big deal? So again, this is another woodcut from the same missionary pamphlet. So destruction and preservation of infants in India. So what the Hindu mothers are doing, so they are throwing their children in the Ganga, and it's the British soldiers and the company who is kind of protecting them. So some of these missionaries, so I think one of these are taken from a book by Claudius Buchanan. He stayed in India for a long time, 20-30 years, and all he could describe of India was, or Hindus, was these were kind of a devil race who worshipped phalluses and were debauched, etc., etc. And this is what he referred to. So I've given the source at the bottom, and it's from his book Memories of Expediency of an Ecclesiastical Establishment for British India. Okay, so means of converting everyone. So this is from 1805. So what he says of the Hindus after having lived in India for a very long time, so those who have had the best opportunities of knowing them and who have known them for the longest concur in declaring that neither truth nor honesty, honor, gratitude nor charity is to be found pure in the breast of a Hindu. How can it be otherwise? And another jewel of a quote. So the robber and the prostitute lift up their hands with the infant and the priest before a horrible idol of clay painted red, deformed and disgusting as the vices which are practiced before it. So this Christian missionary atrocity literature was flooded in the West, and this was racist, this was anti-Hindu, and this was really very evil literature because it conditioned generations of Western people, so starting with the British and everybody else, to view Hindus as subhuman animals. So while you could take all the good things from them, so yoga, steel manufacture, daily baths, shampoos, etc., you could take this from them, but they were inherently evil. So when you are stealing stuff from them, you are actually doing them a favor, because these people can't anyway take care of what they have. And this is found in even today. So this undercurrent runs even today. And see, Gujarat has a lot of ancient manuscript repositories, and in some repositories Western researchers are kind of informally banned, because there have been many instances where they have requested access to manuscripts, and when they view these manuscripts, they surreptitiously tear pages and put it in their pockets and then move out. So this has been happening quite a lot. So this is kind of, and the justification is, see, the Indians anyway can't take care of it, and we are actually doing them a favor by stealing and preserving. So this is very old. So this kind of gives you some of the background, and this conditioned generations and generations of British administrators in India. So they viewed Indians just as an expendable species. And this is again good white gentlemen relieving sick on the banks of the Ganges. So what a great favor they are doing, because Hindus leave their relations to die on the Ganges because they can't be bothered to take care of them. So that was that, and that kind of gives you a little bit of an insight into the mentality. So the next part we look at what I call Malthusian madness, and this concerns the idea of pseudoscientist called Malthus, whose idea is actually very prevalent even today as well, and it dominate thinking in the West. So friends, thank you for watching. I hope you liked it. If you have, please do remember to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Hari Om.